Hello everyone, welcome to this episode. Very excited. This episode is slightly different, I'll be honest. That is because it's going on both of our platforms. So as everyone might know, we've got the Two Who Recruit with Julia, and then we've got the Partner Perspective, which is something that I run. So Cherry, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Cherry, I'm going to get straight to it. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and your background.
Yep.
And tell us a little bit about you.
Hello. And you said it was going to be different as well, and that panicked me, the use of that word. So so I'm Cherry. I'm a partner at BDO, based in London. I've been in the world of professional services pretty much all of my career. Prior to that was at PwC for probably 16 odd years. I focus on internal audit. That's what I love. Sad but true.
No,
no,
it's not.
It's
sad.
not sad. I should say that. So, look, straight away, I'm doing the typical female thing as well, aren't I? Of self-deprecating, ignore that, scrap that. So but I do love internal audit, right? I love it. It's about meeting the people, understanding, at the highest level what's happening in an organisation, how can we help. I love working with my teams. The variety that comes with professional services is absolutely brilliant. I did have a couple of years in industry. So I worked at the ASDA head office in Leeds in their internal audit function. So I have kind of seen both sides. Outside of work, which is obviously incredibly important, I'm a mother to a 9-year-old girl and a stepmother to an 11-year-old boy. So that certainly keeps me busy. And I also have 3 dogs, which never have 3 dogs is all I can say. That's the conclusion on that one.
I love their names. Just for everyone in the audience, what are their names?
Number 1 is Marshmallow, shortened to Marshy, and then 2 and 3 are Bangers and Mash. So they're sausage dogs, and one's white and one's brown, and they're little buggers, but
Love it.
but good for well-being and all of that stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. People have puppy classes or puppy yoga classes.
Puppy yoga, I follow that on Instagram.
Yeah.
It looks amazing.
I actually get jealous because this is people they go into the workplace or it's a work thing, isn't it, to sort of calm.
Yeah, it is. It has. Although they wrecked my house for a period of time and they're slightly better trained now, but the well-being side of it, they're like, when I go home tonight, I know that they'll be so happy to see me, and it doesn't matter how crap of a day you've had. Actually, having that is really lovely. But so they keep me really busy. And then we were just talking about binge watching Netflix, which I also quite like to do.
Absolutely love. It's important to de-stress, isn't it?
Yeah, find
Netflix.
your thing that can just allow you to switch off, and that's
absolutely.
Yeah. It's funny actually. So when this episode is released, it will be released, I think, after April Fool's Day. No, it definitely will be released after April Fool's Day. No. On April Fool's. No, it'll be after. So I can now say it, but for April Fool's Day. What will have happened is we're going to get me a fake tattoo that says I love internal audit because I genuinely am a bit of a weirdo about it.
Cherry, I cannot tell you. I'm pretty sure if you didn't do recruitment, you would go into internal audit.
Yeah.
Also,
100%, I would definitely would do it, 100%.
Yeah, when I mean she's passionate, she's probably more passionate than some candidates she's talked to about audit. You genuinely are. She lives, she breathes it, and I think there will be at least some candidates that believe she's actually done it.
Yeah. Well, that's great though. That's great.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm is, it's catching, isn't it? So hopefully then they're picking up on it. But I feel you.
You've got to like. I think you've got to like what you recruit.
It's a very good
I mean,
point.
I know a lot of people who don't actually enjoy what they recruit.
Well,
and
and I think about what do we recruit and what do we look for? And actually, if I think about the future leaders and the best leaders I work with, they are people who are passionate and enthusiastic about what they do. That is what inspires and motivates me. So I think the more you're looking for that in other people, the better, really. Yeah,
it's half the battle, isn't it? I do often think, when I interview prep people, and the difference and the people I know are going to probably get that call back to that second interview, they might not actually be technically the best fit,
100%,
but you can just tell they are in the room.
Yeah.
Well, and we talk quite a lot about what is the skill set change in internal audit? And actually it is leaning much more towards those softer skills. You are doing things now that are less traditional, transactional, just because of the way the world's changed, and actually it's much more about influencing and negotiating, and so we are looking for different things now. I think sometimes that's certain interview processes, particularly for some of the large firms, are still a bit regimented, and sometimes I think what you get out is not technical is important, shout out to the IIA standards, but there's so many other things as well, I think now.
It's personality, isn't it? And I think every auditor we've spoken to, especially in senior leadership positions, they really do talk about that personality element, especially when you're trying to go into a business and understand more about how it functions and to support to improve it. The other thing that I was going to say is actually, as recruiters, I agree, we do need to be passionate about what we are doing. And that is because, and I was talking about this earlier, that is because if I'm trying to prepare someone to go for an interview, if I'm not passionate and excited about it, about recruiting for that business, about getting them in that process, why would they be excited about it? So
well, I just think it's like it's the as you would expect. I have spoken to a number of recruiters, and there is something about being genuine and feeling like that person does really get it and they know what they're talking about. There are a number of times I've had conversations where they don't understand, and they're just going through the motions, and it does really make a difference, because also I suspect you're in it for the longer term as well, actually. So you don't want a surface level conversation. You want to feel like you really get to know each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also comes back to genuinely advising someone why that move is good for their career. Actually, we've turned around to people, and I said this to a candidate yesterday: do not move, stay there. Stay there for the next year. Build your experience up. And it's saying the right thing for their own benefit, which probably should go against what I do, but you have to be honest.
Or telling them not to go into internal audit. I've done that quite a few times as well. Don't think you're suitable for this industry. I'll just be honest. I think, maybe more behind the screen. You'd be more comfortable just being behind your desk. We can't do that with IA.
I was on a 2-hour negotiating training course today, just like working through role plays and stuff, and managed to find myself in a group with our managing partner, which was quite stressful, but also quite helpful. But we did talk then about the value in those genuine conversations, and I think what I particularly like about where I work now is not feeling pressurized to push something and actually say, yes, probably, I don't think this is the right time for you, or actually the answer isn't for us to do the work, the answer is for you to recruit and you to build up your own team. And that is like so the core of how I operate, and I think is why I've got a number of relationships of 10, 15 years old, because they know that I'm going to tell them like it is.
100%. It's like almost it's the non-sales, isn't it? It's actually not doing what most people think you have to do, which is go overboard and sell everything. Whereas actually sometimes the sale comes from just being yourself and being honest. It does work. When you mentioned about having to have the right personality, just out of interest, so when you're working in a professional services firm, and sorry, I don't do much professional services recruitment, so I'll be intrigued to see how this works. How challenging, therefore, is it to really analyse personality? Because, of course, in some businesses, one personality will work really well, whereas for others, more creatives, it might be a completely different personality. So how do you actually interview for that?
Great question.
I was going to say that's a good question.
Great question. So there's sort of two schools of thought on the question. So the first piece is we do have a framework that we follow, and actually the reality is that particularly if you're interviewing someone quite junior, there's a lot more alignment in what they all do, and they just have to do a number of similar things, and that's fine. I think what we are, and I think certainly my understanding of a lot of professional services firms are getting better at now, is that recognition of we're not all the same, and valuing difference, and playing to your strengths really importantly, and saying, okay, well actually you're a really good candidate. I don't think internal audit's the right answer for you, but actually we've got a forensics team, someone who does number crunching and loves that stuff, or whatever the answer might be. And I love the concept of playing to your strengths, and I think that has been something that I have held on to for quite a long time now, to sort of give me confidence in my own abilities. I'm not the a hard and fast salesman, but actually I'm really good with people and I'm really good with relationships.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to just own that, and I'm going to make the best of my job doing that.
Yeah. That's a really good
I
point.
think that's how teams are built, though, aren't they? That's how you have a strength, like a team that is very powerful and successful, and it is really looking at, actually, you're really good at this, you go off and do that. Like we often say, Jules is the creative person. The amount of ideas Jules comes out with is brilliant. Sometimes
I just can't implement them.
she you know, she'll even say, I'm spitballing, or I'm just thinking out loud. She's definitely an ideas person. I'm the implementation. I can think about how can we put this together, how would we integrate that into the business, but we play to that, and I think that's how every business should work.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. You recognise your strengths and the areas that you're not as strong at, and then you work with those people to get there. I think that we've still generally got a bit more work to do in helping people recognise that, and knowing that, again, they don't have to fit a certain mould, because it's okay. Like, you know, typically, say, whenever I bring gender in, I say typically, women tend to lean more towards the people-orientated roles. That's just what I've seen. And often in professional services, it feels like they are less valued. And so it's quite an interesting, I think the world is evolving at the moment, is actually how do we assign a bit more value and contribution to those roles, because we know those are the roles that are incredibly important and are kind of creating that framework.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right, because I think, and to that point, I went to the IA conference last year, and we talked about, you know, the stereotypical, again, typically in internal audit, they always use the words, you've got to have good gravitas, got to be confident, got to be quite outgoing, got to be able to build relationships really easily. And when I first started recruiting, I didn't really challenge that because, well, A, I was younger, but B, you didn't challenge anybody. And then now I'm a bit older, and actually I've seen that actually that's not important. You know, you might have one individual in your team who's very good at people engagement, going out into the business, building relationships. That is their forte. You might have somebody who's actually not maybe as good at that, but's really good at challenging a stakeholder, and therefore that duo, good cop, bad cop, works really well. And then you may have somebody in the team who actually, you know, really, if we're thinking about neurodiversity, does not want to go out into the business and do that. They find that incredibly challenging, but actually they are very good at data analytics, very good at technology. Now, we all know that for an internal audit team, that is really important nowadays. Yeah. So having that blended skill set is great. And I think I sometimes have to challenge clients about, okay, well, I've always recruited that for you. Could we maybe look at diversifying your personalities?
And I appreciate you don't do as much professional services, but in professional services now, like I've seen a number of different situations where, like, one of the directors I'm working with at the moment, like, where I witnessed how strong a relationship he built up with the client so quickly because they were really similar. It was like, I can back away from this now. This is brilliant. But I've also seen examples where, you know, just there's no relationship there. And even I've had that. And we need to be braver to actually kind of go, well, yeah, you know, that's life, isn't it? You don't get on with everyone.
Yeah.
And so let's connect the right people, but also let's help people. You know, I think there was a long time ago now, sort of some statistics around Myers-Briggs, and like the most common type in professional services is ESTJ, but then increasingly we're getting more introverts. And I was chatting with one of my team the other day about how the more senior you get, often the less time you have with senior stakeholders, and how can you make an impact in a way that works for you when actually you're naturally the one that's a bit quieter on calls. And I think almost like recognising those things and thinking about how we can support our teams to not be different, but just prepare them a little bit for some of those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think different is good, you know, and it goes back to it's relatable, because I've worked with clients where I just can't manage to make it work because it just doesn't. There's certain people that click with certain people, and we have to give away that and say, okay, that's working really well. But I think the other thing that I was going to say about, you know, thinking differently and blended profiles is the FCA hired someone who, the chief internal auditor, who isn't qualified. Yes. And I get a lot of people coming to me to say they must be qualified, whether they're really internal audit roles.
Isn't it? Yeah,
it is interesting. So that's obviously,
that.
That was
it was on Sunday. It was in the FCA. So the guys, it's don't quote me on it because I don't know all the detail, but obviously been in the organisation for a very long time, so I guess you could argue possibly qualified by experience, but
16 years.
There's been quite an uproar to say actually he's got no formal qualifications to allow him to be head of internal audit.
But actually, good on them. Good on, in my opinion, I think that's a great thing, because it goes back to exactly what you said before. You can be QBE. You've got enough knowledge.
Exactly. Like for me, and I, again, don't know all the ins and outs, right, but I absolutely believe in that. Some of the best heads of internal audit that I've engaged with are people who are not technically qualified in any way. They've got a lot of wider business experience, which often is something that in-house teams maybe struggle with a little bit more, because you can be a little bit introverted, and they are very good at the relationship side and getting things done, which is exactly what you would want.
To flip that on its head as well, I just said I am completely in support of that. However, there are teams and people I have spoken to where someone has come in above them, but actually the person below them can, in their opinion, do the role better, and they are doing more than what the person is above them. So I guess that could create a bit of conflict. So I'm probably looking at it with two different sides there.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, again, like what do you value in your leader? Because there's definitely people when I joined BDO in the team that probably thought I could do that job better than you. I know more about I don't have an IIA qualification. I'm ACA. I'm not as technically minded as some of my team, and I think that they probably were like, hold on a minute. But again, actually, what I have been able to do, I hope anyone listening, let me know, is bring my strengths in other ways and actually value their strengths. So one of the things we did was responded to the consultation on the change in the IIA standards. And it wasn't really like, I'm going to own it and I'm going to lead it and I'm going to own the message, but that does not play to my strengths to read lots and lots and pull all the technical stuff out. Like actually I learned through interaction with the team. And then the person who did it actually got the kudos for doing it, and took it global and stuff, which is win-win, right?
Yeah, it's not about that. When you get to that point, when you get to a head of internal audit role, I mean, I don't know any head of internal audit who's still number crunching or still doing debits and credits or
you would hope.
You'd hope not. You'd really hope not. Unless you were a one-man band, for example.
Yeah, agreed.
But if you've got a function and you're right, you hire those people to complement your abilities. And actually, if I was somebody who was like me, I'm a yellow. I'm a yellow person, You're a yellow person, and you're very good about ideas, and you're quite like...
Yes, and you got your blues in.
Yeah, you're just not very analytical. You're just very much about ideas and talking to people and communication and whatever. My strength is definitely not IT process. That's not me at all. But I have somebody in my team who is very good at that, and I purposely love having her in my team because she's really good at that, and so she almost is my blind spot. Yeah. She kind of covers my bad areas, which I like.
You need that. Every team needs that.
Yeah.
I've got a question for you, Cherry, because on the partner's perspective, I'm sure the audience will probably want to know this, and the professional services market in general that I work with from a candidate perspective, they often say PwC to BDO, especially when I'm talking to them about it, and I'd love to hear your perspective. It's the same. Why should I move from Big Four to a BDO or an RSM or an Evelyn Partners? Can you give from your perspective what made you make that move and how is it different? Please fill us in.
I'll try. I'll try. Yeah, look, I can definitely give you my perspective on the. In fact, I was talking to someone just back in the office earlier who's just made the move from PwC to BDO as well. So it was quite interesting to compare and contrast. So for me, the two main drivers for my move was, number one, culture. Culture is so important to me. One of BDO's values is be genuine. Coming back to what I said before, it's just what I'm about. I love it, and I just feel more at home at BDO in terms of being able to be myself and bring my strengths, and almost like less of a, I don't know what the right word is, less of a polish. I don't know if that's the right word. Hopefully you know what I mean. So culturally, and I think that comes with just being a smaller firm as well. That's just the reality of size. Like PwC was a beast, and there's loads of great things that come with that. Don't get me wrong. I'm so thankful for my career. but it was so big that actually I think the messaging at the top didn't always cascade down to the people who were feeling it. And one of the things that when I was thinking about leaving, I made director relatively early in my career, actually in 2013. So I was a director for 7 years, which is quite a long time. I used to call myself a geriatric director. It's like, but it was, what was happening in the firm is that it was getting so big that there wasn't really any space to move. So it wasn't like I wasn't doing a good job, but progression was a really important thing to me. It was a measure of doing a good job, whether that's the right measure or not. That was just the framework that I worked in.
Yeah.
And I remember when I told people I was leaving, they were like, "We're really gutted, but we get it," because they knew there was nowhere to go. And actually, some of that, there was a lot of us at director level, and some of that sort of desire to progress would showcase itself in perhaps some ways that just didn't work for me in terms of behaviours. So culturally, it is, and I will stand by it. It is a brilliant place to work. It is down to earth. People are genuine, and I love it. And we are very collaborative. The second thing, which kind of linked into that, but was really important, was the opportunity that presented me personally. So obviously it was an opportunity to go in as a partner, but ignoring the title, it was an opportunity to go in and help them grow the business. Like rather than coming from a fairly well-established, saturated place that we were at PwC to one where actually we had this great opportunity in front of us on the back of mandatory firm rotation. People were looking outside of the big four, and at the point when I joined, we were just starting to invest in the wider team that I sit in, and so really being part of that education of actually look what we can do, look what we can bring, and I say to everyone, like, it's amazing to look back even just the 2.5 years and see what's changed and what I've contributed to, and the feedback I get and the client list that I have now compared to what we had before, like amazing. And I feel like because I can influence so much more, I feel much more connected to the organisation. Like we're just about to go through partner elections, and I'm really interested. And I never thought I would be. I'm really passionate about the future of the firm and what happens and how I can shape that, because the team looks up to me to do that. So culture and opportunity, and I would say in both cases it is much more suited to me and what drives me. And because it is a smaller firm, there is a natural agility that comes with that. And I think as we've grown, we're now at a point also where we can bring that strength of expertise as well that potentially we didn't have before.
Yeah. No, it's really, really well put and very informative for our world that we operate in. So thank you.
Well, I've got quite a controversial question.
Oh, no.
Here she goes.
Aren't BDO top 4, really?
Wow, great question. Yeah, well, it depends what you're measuring, right?
Sorry, I can say
In my
that.
eyes, yeah, you can say that.
I can say that.
It depends what you're measuring. And this is the root cause for me of why I do have challenges sometimes with culture in these firms, is because it becomes all about money and revenue. And that sounds really naive. Like, I do get it. Like, we're a business, we got to make money. But if you're measuring other things, measuring the student experience, measuring the number of women, there's all different other things you can measure that I think will give you a different perspective on that. And I also believe that what is measured is what is externally presented rather than what the reality is sometimes inside. I think it's it is very easy to paint a certain picture of certain things.
Yeah, and I also think there's certain messages that go out on the market. So, from a few candidates, that I've heard BDOs trying to be the big four and heading towards that way, which from a growth perspective, okay, why would someone or why would a firm not want to grow and get bigger? Of course, that's business. That's why we're there.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
It's really interesting, actually, because we talk about it a lot within the firm and within the partner group, as we're sort of thinking about what do we want to be. We've got aspirations to grow, but what does that mean? And I think particularly on the point around culture, because we've recruited quite heavily at the partner level, partners who are from the larger firms. That naturally is going to have a pull on culture. And does that mean, you're bringing in, ex PwC, Deloitte, that means that's what we want to be like. The very clear message is we do not want to be like that. We are very clear on the market space for us and our heartland and that sort of mid-market, and that is where we want to play. Yes, of course we will support organisations at different ends of the spectrum, but that is where we operate the best. That is where our agility aligns to. I hear that all the time in terms of how we're restructuring like what we do within our broader advisory team, where the audit team are focusing. And long may it continue, because that's why I joined. That's why a lot of us left where we were. So
and that's I've also heard that on the market is we don't want to be the big four. We've got our space in the market, and that's what we're really good at. But it's interesting to talk about both sides, because you never know, someone listening to this podcast would have heard one or the other. So it's interesting to clarify for them how you're coming from that perspective as well.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with a candidate the other day, and it really angered me. They were ex-BDO and went to PwC, so other way around, were BDO, went to PwC, and that's because a recruiter told them you won't have as good a career if you don't have the big four in your CV. And I got so angry, because I was like, so hang on, you moved from BDO to PwC for 2 years because, lo and behold, they didn't feel it was the right environment for them actually in the end, to then go into a really good job. But they didn't get that really good job in-house because they'd been at PwC. I know that. They'd got that really good job in-house because they had some really good experience from BDO. And I just got really upset for that candidate that they'd made this big move for no reason.
It's your passion
coming
out again.
Yeah, well, because they were told by somebody that they had to get the big four in their CV. It really drives me nuts.
Do you know what? I think that it really depends on what floats your boat and what you're looking for out of your career, because, you know, ultimately a lot of people join these firms to get their accountancy qualification and move on. And, you know, joining some of the larger firms, you're in a big graduate intake, it's really social. You know, it does depend. Again, it's interesting that the team member I was talking to earlier, she's moved across. She's still what we would call early in careers, is still on a sort of graduate pathway. And she asked me the question, like, what advice would I give? And I said, what you will find here is you will be able to get involved in more variety, more diverse stuff, because we're a lot smaller team. And I just said, embrace it. Take every single opportunity that is presented with you. Put your hand up for it. Do some shadowing. And she sort of gave the example, I'm already writing an article that's, you know, potentially going to... And she's like, I never would have got a chance to do that before. And I was like, that's great. Pick up all of these skills, because whether you choose to stay with us, and I hope you will, but if you don't, then brilliant, because you've just got many more strings to your bow.
I think adding to your candidate sort of scenario
Dilemma,
it's to add some insight into it, it is a very professional services thing to think that way, because you see the other side of the market, don't you? Whereas I talk to candidates where there is something that they are just wanting, I need that big four brand. It is prestigious. It is big. It is, there's a weight to their name, which you will hate me for saying, because I get it. I get it. To me, if you're at a professional services firm, you've done it. You've got it. They work in similar ways. It's just a different brand doing similar things. Yes, I know they offer different things, but there is a name, Jules. There are 100%. People who will say, I want big four. These are the reasons why I want that brand on my name. And it goes back to what you said earlier. It depends what you want.
It does. I mean, you know, 22 years ago, whenever it was, I started in the world, and you know, even it was the big four. Was it the big five? No, it was just after the big five. So yeah, it was the big four, and it still is, right? But I think, you know, I guess because BDO are growing and we're educating, and our client base is so much bigger, and we've got such depth and breadth of expertise now, I think it will our brand will get stronger from a graduate perspective. But will it ever reach the heights of the large firms? Don't know. But then maybe that's not a problem.
It's not always a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it? It's not always a bad thing.
Yeah.
You've mentioned that you gave some advice to one of your female grads.
Yes.
So my question is more about being a female in the corporate world. I'd like to get your thoughts on what you think it takes to be successful as a female in the corporate world.
Yeah. oh, how long have you got? I definitely don't have all the answers, and I suspect nobody does. Again, can only reflect on my personal experiences, but
and depends on what you I guess think of the word success. But we know what we're talking about here. Successful in the corporate world, right?
Yeah. Agreed. And so my overarching comment, I think, is about give yourself a break, be kinder to yourself. Like, that is, know your worth. That's what I've learned a lot of over the past probably 5 or so years, particularly in terms of the reasoning behind I've made certain decisions. Because when you work in professional services, possibly slightly stronger so in the larger firms, you are measured within a framework, you operate in a framework. That's all for 20 odd years. That's all how my brain has functioned, and I measure myself against that, and that's part of the type of person I am. I've always been like that. So it's very, very easy then to let that define you as a person and almost define your value. So coming back to my earlier point then about strengths, is for me, really getting clear on my strengths and how they play out and how I bring them to work every day was really helpful then to counteract that. There's this framework that I've got to operate in and I'm going to be measured against. I'm not doing that bit, I'm not doing that bit, but actually these are the things that I'm doing. So my overarching thing is just be kind to yourself and actually just talk to other people. Like, it's so important. We had a female partner get together last week, and we purposely didn't really put any structure around it. It was sort of fairly early days in it as a network, and talked about, shared our stories. What do we think? What are our challenges? And that was just, it is so nice when you're talking to someone like, I feel like that, because we're so busy, and we do traditionally, stereotypically, men can perhaps, I don't know, maybe show less vulnerability sometimes, and therefore you build this assumption that everything's perfect for them and they're brilliant and everything's going well, and then you're internally going, and so actually, like, having your network, your really close people to talk to is incredibly important. But yeah, just just give yourself a break, and do not measure yourself by any kind of framework that exists within a firm, because you are worth so much more than that.
Yeah, I heard this the other day actually. I went to an International Women's Day event, and one of the speakers, he talked about how he goes to businesses and he reminds people that, if we're looking at, I guess, men in business as well, we always assume that everything is for them easy and perfect, and it really, really isn't.
No,
and it's about inclusivity as opposed to just about diversity. But I think, that's a really good point there, that, again, there's so much more going on in our world, in our lives.
Yeah.
It's not just about
and don't
gender.
Maybe this is like something that people, maybe this is an old thing, but like, don't hide from it. I have to go early because I have to pick my daughter up. I'm going to be in late because I have to pick my daughter up. She's got to go to the dentist. And that's my life. And actually, I get a lot of people going, "Oh, how do you juggle it, manage it?" I'm like, well, sometimes it's rubbish. Sometimes it's an absolute nightmare. But that's fine. And I manage it. And actually, I'm really lucky that in my job I've got that flexibility. That means I can manage it. I know it's a lot more difficult for some people to do. So yeah, I think it's a really difficult one though, because a lot of people sort of say what needs to change and what should be different. But I think it's a really hard question to answer, because again, when I joined the profession, we were talking about this, and we're still talking about it 20 odd years later. I, like, as a mother, and I was trying to articulate this to someone the other day. Like, I have a biological connection with my daughter that you just can't explain, and so she is on my mind a lot. Like I said to you when I was walking here, I was trying to sort out childcare for next week, because that's just and that's fine, and I don't mind. But trying to get other people to understand that, who have not experienced that, it is quite difficult, and that is a male and female difference. That's just the reality of it. It is different being a mother and being a father, and having that. There's one thing, sharing drop off and pick up, to all the other things that you have to think about. The school WhatsApp group, for example, is out of control.
To add to that, and I think you do a terrific job. And I was about to ask you, how do you balance it all? Which, support from your organisation, support from a firm is really, really important. But it's just sort of, I think women often feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, women often feel that you need to get it all. You need to really nail everything down.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't know, I'm not a man, so I don't know, but I don't know if that's how they feel. Do they feel that, or do they apply that pressure on themselves to think, I got to have it all, I've got to sort childcare, I really need to be amazing at work and present and all the other bits. Do we do that to ourselves? Is that a female thing? How do you cope with it all?
I think, again, typically, and from, hearing stories and research, I think it is more typically a female thing. Like there's that, you guys will definitely know about this, I'm sure, like that thing, if a woman looks at an ad and there's 5 points, she only got 3, she won't go for it, and then the man's the other way. Like, and I do think that's probably a fair representation. Why we do it to ourselves,
Who knows?
who knows? Like we set such high standards. But somebody years and years ago sent me an article, and it was called it was specifically for people in professional services. It was called the underperforming overachiever, and it was almost that mindset of I am driven quite highly by the sense of achievement, and therefore it's never good enough. It's never good enough, and that's
Do
good,
more.
but it's bad as well. And I do think generally, perhaps that is a little bit more of a female thing in terms of just needing to. I need to prove myself, but within my own unrealistic world, which then doesn't make sense.
And high performers do apply pressure on themselves, don't they? Naturally, that's why they do what they do.
That's why they do what they do. Yeah, but that's when you have to be able to check yourself. And I've certainly had some challenges over the years around my mental health where I've lost that ability to check myself and realise that where's the end. And one of my colleagues' partner was sort of saying, if you've got another opportunity, have you got capacity for this? And I'm like, me, I'll just do it. Yes. Actually, that's probably not the right answer, is it? It's not good for anyone.
It's that kind of, I need to flag it internally because maybe I'm maybe I've got too much going on. Maybe they need more resource. Need more resource. My friend has that problem. She will always say, I'm working really late. And I'm like, well, have you flagged it to your boss? No. Why not? Tell them that you're struggling. Otherwise, they have no idea.
How can you get support if you don't flag it or talk about it?
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
But it's like So I went through a course of CBT last year, like trying to, for me, the same sort of things kept coming up, like the sort of triggers, and then I'd start to sort of think, I'm not good enough because I'm not doing this, and measuring myself about things. And that was like, for anyone who hasn't had CBT and is having challenges, I cannot recommend it enough to try and really understand your core beliefs and how they're manifesting themselves and how you can manage them. And I think, again, particularly in a professional services environment where almost like you're in charge of your own destiny. I could sit back and put my feet up. I mean, I might get found out eventually, but you can sort of measure your own pace. That can be quite tricky, and I found that quite tricky over the years.
I think just being honest about what support we all need. So again, I started going to therapy last year, one of the best things I've ever done. And I was so nervous about telling people. I remember thinking, I can't tell anybody this. Can't tell anybody. And it became this big thing. I sort of announced it to my friends and announced it to people, and everyone was like, we've been doing it for the past 5 years. I was like, well, no, why has no one bloody told me this? And I now speak to clients about it. Clients will tell me quite often they are going actively to therapy. I'm now saying to candidates, when they're coming to me with imposter syndrome issues, anxiety, they're really stressed, I'm like, go to therapy, it's brilliant. And it's this, once you actually just start talking about it, it's like saying you to the doctors. It's like saying you to the dentist. It's exactly the same thing. Well, it's really important.
It's because we talk about mental health a lot, and I am very passionate about it, and it's that thing of it's invisible, so therefore it's not like a thing. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we share our own experiences. Again, come back to the point about vulnerability. Then I hope that the more people recognise actually there's nothing wrong with it. It's a great thing. It's just going to make you more resilient in the longer term.
Is it a cultural thing? Because if you think about the US, the US are really open to this. I mean, if you don't have one, that's questionable.
That's a good point.
You got to have one. Really is it a UK thing? Because we are like that, aren't we? Yeah, we are. You not really talk about your feelings.
Yeah, we're a bit more reserved,
aren't we?
Definitely.
As people, as society. But I think
you have a cup of tea.
I love a cup of tea.
That's that's the solution.
Well, everything's like stiff upper lip, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
oh, you know, I'll survive. Or, you know,
That's fine.
I'll eat the meal you brought out for me, even though it's cold. That's great.
And as
Lovely.
yeah, and as someone who has suffered imposter syndrome, being honest and transparent about that, it is horrible. I mean, I know there's a lot of partners that I speak to that have said they have it, and I'm like, do you? You are incredible. Like, you are absolutely successful. You have it? What? Like, it's actually a shock, because you view this person, and they are so successful. They are so ambitious. They've done so well in their career, and I feel like that. So I'm like, oh my God, I can relate. I can relate to you, because you've been through it. And I know if I take myself back to when I first got into the director position, I was doubting myself. I'm like, oh, can I do this? Am I good at this? Go a month or two without making any recruitment placements, and you're like, oh, I can't do my job anymore. I suck at this. And it's just, you just spiral, don't you? Like, we all do.
Yeah. And
Horrendous.
someone once said to me about, like, you know, you really challenge yourself on what is a fact and what is a thought.
Yeah.
Like, and I think 95% of my brain is thoughts, and it just then goes off. And again, I mean, I can rein it back in, but it is hard. There'll be certain things that
Jules
trigger.
last night.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She came into work and she was like, Sheena, went down a Google rabbit hole. And I was like, Jules, what have you done now? Google will tell you you're probably dying.
I'm not going to go into
terrible.
what I thought I had
We won't
last night.
disclose what she did.
Never use Google as anything.
Like,
medical,
oh, Jules,
'cause, yeah,
this is
it'll be,
Jules.
Yeah.
Here she goes again.
It's
No,
funny.
it is a good point though. I think, yeah, she's being more open. But this is, I think, one of the problems actually with our generation now as well, actually. So I don't think we are as good at coming together and talking. I mean, the classic example is, so I went to a client yesterday, a client that is creative. It's got a lot of very young people in the business. It's a great office, got loads of breakout rooms. It's all it encourages people to come together and work together. And there was an assessment centre going on. All the young sort of 21-year-olds, I'd say, all came into the main room, and they all were sat on their phone.
What?
They weren't talking at all. Not at all.
It's interesting.
As in, this was a meeting that was happening or something designed specifically for that time, and they were on their phone.
No, this
Am I
was an
understanding that?
assessment centre, so they were
Right.
coming to interview, right?
Yeah.
Remember, like,
Okay.
old school assessment
Yeah,
centres,
yeah.
And they were all coming to interview, and they were all sat around this breakfast table, not talking.
If anyone can't see my face, I'm gobsmacked. That is
Like-
terrible. That's disrespectful.
Well, it's
That's
just
not
like-
okay.
But it's just worrying, isn't it? Because if they genuinely can't turn to the person next to them and talk to that person next to them,
Yeah.
how are we ever going to have conversations like this?
And it's point one of my team had a phone stolen outside Waterloo yesterday for just being on your phone, like as I am all the time, like looking on things. So note those people. but it's when we think about the future and we think about AI and all the stuff that's going on at the moment, and not really knowing where it's all going to land, what I hope will come out of the back of it is that you still recognise the value of human interaction and what that brings. Now, if we're at a point then where that's not even being challenged and tested and honed, which is what 20 years of this world has done, then what will they be able to bring to the profession? Because
well, exactly. What is the point of hiring a human being if they can't even bring the human element
that's
to
what
the
I would
job?
worry about. Yeah.
Unpopular opinion or popular opinion, depending on which side of the crowd it is. But if you cannot be like an interactive person in a business, you just get made redundant.
Yeah, where's your
Sorry
value?
to put it out there.
Where's
No,
your
it's
value?
true.
Yeah, and that's what and humans do have loads of value. It's a weird thing to say, but like I do think we are in this technology super evolution at the moment where everyone's panicking about everything because they don't know what the impact's going to be. But it's very clear that there's we bring a lot, and all of that relational side of things, that empathy. But not if, we're going to live our lives on our phones.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, let me text you and have a conversation with you, as opposed to having conversation with you whilst you're in front of me. That is just crazy.
The only thing that I was thinking before is that I think that the whole concept of mental health and well-being, though, is a lot a lot better understood and recognised because of social media and because of that. Like when I was growing up in the world, that wasn't a thing, and like I wasn't really in tune with any of that. Whereas now it does feel like it's recognised a lot more, and I think that is probably through like social media and things like that. Which is a good thing.
Yeah, but Catch-22, you might completely disagree, and please be open and honest if you do. Is I think it's exacerbated through that.
Yeah.
Through social media. So it's almost as if, yes, it's great to create awareness, but also that is the thing that is creating so much anxiety and frustration for people, because they're using that as a comparison thing about themselves, and that offsets a whole different set of problems.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. And actually, when I think about, would I like to live in a world where I didn't have a phone? Yeah, probably. Yeah. Which is like, I love my phone. I love Instagram. I'm on Instagram all the time.
Me too. I don't know if I'd survive without it, if I'm honest.
Which is crazy, isn't it? I can remember when I got my BlackBerry, like my last job, and when I got it as a manager, and it was like so exciting. And now I'm like, oh my God, just leave me alone.
Me and Jules made a joke earlier, because we were saying, actually, we have the most important things coming to our work phone, right? Home insurance and all this stuff. The thing is, I probably wouldn't be able to do my home life nor my work life without a phone. So what would I do? I'd be completely lost and buggered, quite frankly.
I think on that point around, it is, we are benefiting from it. I think that's the point. We are benefiting from it, i.e., we're millennials. We're benefiting from it because we've lived in a period of time where we haven't had phones. My concern is for are Gen Zs benefiting from it, or are the generation behind that?
Gen A, apparently.
Gen A,
yeah.
Are Gen A going to benefit from that? Because if they can't actually talk to each other about their mental health, who are they communicating it to? It goes back. So it's very confusing. You've obviously got a daughter who's 9, as you said.
Yeah.
What do you sort of see in the future for her? I mean, one of our big questions is what do you think you would like the future to look like?
So I think like less tech reliance, or I mean, it's inevitable, right? But I think that landing with a bit of stability around that, amongst other things that need to stabilise a little bit, because the world's all over the place at the moment. So I think that recognition of the value in the human element of whatever. And she's very creative, actually, which will be really interesting to see how that develops. Like, she loves music and art. I wasn't very good at any of that. I don't know where she's got it from. What I really hope is coming back to the point that we talked about before around valuing difference, and her. So when I reflect on her school life now, like they do lots of after school clubs, they have loads of opportunities to different things, and I'm in a really privileged position that I'm supporting her, and I'm like, you try whatever you want, because I was so scared to take risks for quite a long time, and I probably still am actually, because I was very academic at school, and it was just about that, and I didn't really want to try anything else, and I wasn't very good at sport, and I'm like, do it. I got an electric drum kit for Christmas for my sins, but it's just about like, I want you to try loads of stuff so you're not afraid, because coming back to that human element, I think that will be increasingly more important than that she gets great grades. Of course I want her to do well academically, like I think that's just a normal feeling, but I also want her to just be a strong woman who just wants to try things and just enjoy life and not get all worried about stuff.
And that builds resilience, because if you encourage her to try certain things and it doesn't work out, so what? Big deal. You have learned something at the back of it. You'll be able to pick yourself, which actually, whatever route you go down, will add value into your work lifestyle, which is brilliant, because often enough, especially in recruitment, I don't know about audit day to day, but you need resilience. You need to be able to be rejected, or a lot of our stuff is actually sales is basically what we do, and you get a lot of no's before you even get a yes. But I suspect that would happen in so many different jobs. So good on you, because I think there's a lot of cultures where they are, especially I don't know about sort of the next generation, but parents have told their children to go down certain routes, and you can only be a lawyer, or you can only be a doctor, or whatever else that the professionals are. That's what people have been sort of pushed down. So good on you to encourage your daughter to be like, what, try something. I think that's really admirable.
It's and look, I'm absolutely not saying that, as I say, there isn't, I'm sort of almost living myself through her a little bit, and she's like, I didn't get 10 out of 10 on a test, and so I'm like,
kills you.
As long as you tried your best. It's
That's
taking
it.
part that counts.
We start.
Yeah, it's funny actually because my parents are really supportive of. I've always done a lot of sport and did a lot of like extracurriculars, and they were never telling me what to do. However, and they'll be happy with me saying this. This is where it gets cut. They'll be happy with me saying this. They are naturally not very. They're naturally very risk averse. So they are very risk averse.
Yeah.
They don't like change.
Yep.
They go to the same place on holiday every summer. They eat the same dinners every week. So Monday night, I know what they're having for dinner. It's chilly. They are really into their structure, and so they do encourage me quite often not to take risks, and I've sometimes had to really think I'm going to have to go against them here a little bit. I'm going to have to maybe go against my parents at 32 because they're telling me not to take a risk. But I'm naturally thinking, no, I can't let them do what I think a lot of parents, let's admit it, do.
Yeah.
Which is they don't do it, and therefore they try and push their kid down that road. And most parents do that, right? That's quite normal.
Well, and it's a generational thing as well. Like my parents
Absolutely.
are exactly the same, and they sort of often you talk about something, and it's like all the bad things that will happen. Like they consider all of that. I'm like, yeah, but what about the good stuff? What about
Upside.
the upside? And don't worry about it so much. And yeah, actually, almost countering them has probably helped me to be a little bit more like relaxed, like what they're like with Poppy, their granddaughter. Like, she's gonna fall off things. Like, don't worry about it.
She'll be okay.
Yeah, she'll be fine.
She'll be fine. I think we do have a question around mentoring. And have you in your career had mentors? How and I think I'd be quite interested in this actually because I'm at the moment looking for new ones, but thinking about how do you even start? How do you decide who you get as a mentor? Any advice around that?
I have had mentors, and I've had different ones at different points in my career. When perhaps I've needed different things, and I think actually then just reflecting on that point, you don't need to have one as well. I think sometimes you can have more than one because you might need the arms around, or you might need to kick up the bum, and you'll get that from different people. How I've found them or asked people, because I've definitely asked, which I think you have to sort of encourage people to do.
Yeah, that takes guts in itself.
It's where when you just meet someone and you just I can feel the connectivity. I respect you, or I resonate with your story. The first sort of proper one I had was actually the female partner who interviewed me at PwC for the director role. So I'd only met her at that one moment, which was in my director interview. It was her and then another male partner. And when you just get a really good vibe from someone, and we had a meeting afterwards just to run through the feedback, and I was like, actually, it'd be really good if I could spend a bit more time with you, obviously as a successful female, and then it kind of progressed from there. And the same things happened at BDO. Again, a successful female partner. Actually, one interaction with her, I was just like, I just really like the way she thinks. She's really down to earth. She's done well. For me, it's like I don't know what does success look like in our relationship? Don't know actually, but it tends to just go down a route where I really value talking to her every couple of months and talking about where I'm at and what's going on, and just getting her to ask me questions and unpick things. So really value.
I think earlier on you said it's important, and I think it's something that I really encourage certain candidates, especially when I'm talking to them. And I was having this conversation with a candidate the other day, and I said, do you have a mentor? And we provide women in leadership platforms. We can give free coaching, which we've got going on in June. But it's really important. I don't think people think about it often. If I'm honest, I didn't. Up until maybe sort of 4 years ago-ish, I think that's when I really started to take it seriously, especially if you want to start asking for those promotion sort of, cycles, and what can you do to gear yourself up to that. Also just become a bit more well-rounded. There might be a skill set you want to hone in on or really learn. But I think in audit, from when I'm speaking to candidates, I think it's something they need to think about a bit more and take a bit more seriously.
I think so, yeah. I what we call people manage, a senior manager, and I encouraged her to get a mentor, and actually I suggested someone, and that was someone who was outside of our team, different region, quite a different style actually, but I could just I felt like they would work really well together to almost just get a really different perspective on how to do things, and I think that can be quite important. And interestingly, when I was getting some exec coaching, which I know is different to mentoring, but actually one of the great things at BDO is you did these like chemistry sessions, so you had a few different options, and you'd have an hour with them, and you sort of talk about your story and what you were looking to get, and so you sort of, you almost thought, well, who am I going to work the best with, which I thought was good. And I think people should do that from a mentor perspective as well. It's like, I do it. If someone asks me, will you be my mentor, I'm like, well, let's spend a bit of time together. I'm not going to take any offence if actually you go away and like, God, she talks about Love Island all the time, that's not what I want.
But it is like dating. It is kind of like dating. You've got to find that right connection. I've sort of gone into some sessions going, I don't know, it works. You've got to get it right. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I follow up on that? Do you recommend, and I've got an opinion on this, but before I give mine, I want to see what yours are. Do you think when you have a mentor that it should also be your line manager? So do you think that's healthy? Do you think it can be the same person?
I think it can be, but I think I would say probably in about 20% of cases, if I was to put a number around, like I think it really depends on the personality types there. The more valuable ones will be ones that you don't work with, that are outside of your working world. Like you can still work in the same company, but because they're totally independent to what you do. They can be like, well, why did you do that? Or why did the person do that? And actually that's just a really refreshing conversation.
And surely being part of being a manager, there is an element of mentoring. So it's all kind of, it's almost it's a segment, isn't it? A segment of your management responsibility should really be mentoring as well as.
The reason I posed that question is because I was talking to a candidate yesterday, and she was saying actually her mentor is her boss. And I was like, actually, I recommend that you don't do that. I recommend, absolutely, from a line management perspective,
boss, a control freak.
Absolutely bossy.
Well, sometimes you want to talk
I
about.
felt like I was being bossy there.
Well, no, but it's your gut reaction, right? Usually people's gut reactions are right. But yeah, I think, there are a number of mentor conversations you have with your mentor. It's like, I'm dealing with this really tricky situation of someone in the team. Like, how do you do that if actually you're talking to your boss? So I think your visceral reaction.
Don't get me wrong, I like Dave at IAC, but I don't want him being my manager and my line, like my boss that I report to, and my mentor. Even he'd agree, Sheens, you're too much. See?
I just think it's all rolled into one. I don't really get it.
It must be too much overlap.
You just want. I've learnt the most in life from all the different people I've worked for. So it's just, someone once said to me about having your like board, like if you were to draw out like around a boardroom table, like who are your key people, and you will look at people for different things. I've still got my school friends if I want to regress to being a 14-year-old and laugh like about the most ridiculous things, but then I've got other friends who will be like, doing that, what about that girl? And so I think you have to just broaden your horizons to learn.
Oh good. Candidate X, you won't be named, but I gave you the right advice and I'm sticking to it.
I just think that boss just obviously doesn't want her to go out and get a mentor, because obviously
she's gonna hate me when she listens to this.
It might be awkward to then have to go, actually I don't want you to be my mentor anymore.
Or my manager
advised me.
Or my manager. Last question. So I'm not sure if we mentioned this to you. We have a bamboozled question.
Oh, you
my
didn't.
Favourite time. This one's from the Two Who Recruit. This is a Two Who Recruit theme, isn't it?
Yeah, this is. Don't worry, it's not that scary. We did once have a question that we hadn't thought about the answer to ourselves, which...
Oh, Jules tripped me up. She asked me one, and I was like, I can't answer that. I have not thought about that.
Yeah,
I way overthought that. So don't worry. Even we mess it up on our own episodes.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna go. We actually had thought of two, but I'm gonna go for this one. Oh. So. You are, as a film being made about your life. No. Who is playing you?
Oh my God.
And why?
Who's playing me? So, well, like my initial reaction, this is ridiculous. Like my initial reaction is Jim Carrey.
Oh, he's great.
And clearly that makes no sense to anyone.
I've just got
who
Mask,
live in my
Mask film.
head. But the reason why, like, when I talk about what are my favourite films, it's always Jim Carrey films, right? It always goes back to that. Like, I love humour. I love having fun. He's so silly.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I do have a small chip on my tooth as well, actually, but that wasn't the reason why I suggested it. So I've got no idea if that's a good answer to your question or not. But it's just the first thing. It's just about someone who has fun and doesn't take themselves too seriously.
I love
so
that.
that's like my, yeah.
I love it. Good answer. Good answer. Now I've just got him in a wig in my head.
Got the mask picture in my head.
Thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate that. Really enjoyed it. And
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time on the Two Who Recruit or Partners Perspective.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.